Hi, this is first in the series of lectures targeted towards viewers' education in the study of Indian modern history. History is full of events and facts associated with them. When I was exploring these facts myself, a question as to why study history came to my mind, and the answer lies in the quest to understand the present. History helps us make sense of the present and gives us lessons for future to make the world a better place. Like, I belong to India, and understanding Indian history helped me to reason out why in present society people think in a certain way, why the things, the institution, function in the way they do, and where our cultures come from. But only going through the facts would not lead us there. For serving this purpose, we'll have to reason everything, understand the motive behind events, that is, why it all happened in the first place. This lecture series would not only help history enthusiasts but also university students and aspirants of various national and state level examinations. Therefore, as an additional help, I would also be providing the documented version of these lectures and compilation of facts related to topics I would be covering. So, let's dive into our first topic: European exploration of the East. 15th century Europe was filled with ideas of exploration. This led to discovery of eastern lands by numerous explorers. One such explorer, Vasco da Gama, reached Indian subcontinent in 1498. This discovery brought in a new era in history of Indian subcontinent. The Portuguese established themselves at coastal towns, took over local trade, and made huge profits. The Dutch, English, and French followed them with similar motives. Centuries of internal wars, coupled with external factors, eventually led to English supremacy in India, which continued till 1947, when India finally gained independence. So, how it all began? Why it all happened? It all has its roots in Renaissance. Renaissance was the cultural rebirth between 14th to 17th century Europe, inspiring the ideas of humanism and humanistic revival of intellectual or artistic achievements. Wait, what? Oh, okay, let's try to understand. Medieval societies were based on a political and economic model which was a military hierarchy known as feudalism. It involved four levels of society, as you can see. King, the head of kingdom, keeping with him certain amount of land, gave the rest to nobles. The nobles were required to protect the lands and maintain armies to serve the king in times of war. The nobles passed some of their lands to knights who were fighters. The knights, in a similar manner, passed some of their lands to peasants who were growers of food. Despite carrying land in their name, the peasants did not have the right of ownership and transfer of their lands. All this transfer of land was returned as favors of food, protection, and money up through the levels to the king. As you can see, this tight economic system had rich, poor, but no concept of middle class. As more and more trade routes were discovered throughout the world, trade in commodities grew like never before. This led to emergence of a new middle class of persons called bourgeois, who were not dependent upon land ownership, but were individual property owners dependent entirely on trade. This paved the way for their coming out of tightly wrapped exploitative feudal system as the middle class, which did not needed land for their survival. This emergence of new class that came out of the feudal system was filled with zeal of reform and new ideas for society. This set waves of humanism all over Europe, which is nothing but ethical stand of valuing human beings individually and collectively in a society based on rational thinking, something way absent in feudal system. These ideas set off a cultural movement over Europe, inspiring minds for artistic and intellectual achievements, which altogether came to be known as Renaissance. Now, an indirect effect of Renaissance was idea of sea voyages to explore new lands. But wait, wasting huge amounts of money on ships and voyages just because it's Renaissance? Stupid. Or were they? Of course, they were happy, but not stupid. So, it turns out there were other motives involved. Europeans from ancient times used land and sea routes to bring from India commodities like spices, silk, and precious stones. These were in huge demand in Europe. After the Roman Empire fell, the Arabs controlled many of the strategic areas used for sea trade from India, especially sea trade through the Red Sea. Also, the land route through Persia was in control of Arabs now. As a result, the Arabs became middlemen in trade from Asia, and thus direct contact between Europe and India was lost. Meanwhile, shipbuilding industry was at its boost in Europe. Ideas of exploring new sea routes were emerging. Prince Henry himself was so obsessed with the idea of sea voyages that he was called Prince Henry the Navigator. Another motive for them was to counter Islamic influence and spread Christianity. Pope Nicholas, as early as 1454, conferred on Prince Henry the right to navigate the sea to distant shores in an attempt to fight Islamic influence and spread Christian faith. The intention to counter Arab trade and Islamic influence led to extreme European policies like fighting wars for establishing trade monopoly and religious conversions into Christianity, as we'll see later. Also, some economic developments in Europe demand our attention here, which led to surge in demands of products brought from India. Let's see. Expansion of land under cultivation, coupled with scientific techniques of crop management, led to economic growth of society, which in turn led to greater demand for ornaments and luxurious items. Economic growth of people also led to increased demand for meat, which in turn led to surge for demand in spices, which was needed for their cooking and preservation. All of these factors and underlying motives set forth the stage for European exploration of new sea routes to Asia. The Portuguese were the first to arrive. Important point to take away from all of this is the Europeans were in it for making huge profits with the intention to monopolize trade, something which requires taking control of the areas. This colonial policy runs like a common thread in all the European expeditions to India.